All right, welcome back to the channel, everybody. I am joined with Jimmy and Brandon tonight. Before we dive into our conversation, I just want to wish everybody a happy Memorial Day weekend. I know a lot of our followers are probably going to go out and execute a Murph this weekend. So best of luck with that. Really push yourself, go for that great score. Brandon, Jimmy, you guys getting into any of that this weekend?
Brandon, you go first.
Yep, I'm going to do Murph. I'm actually working Sunday and then overtime on Memorial Day, so we're going to do it at the station. Sometimes it's a challenge because if we get a call, it interrupts the timing, but we're going to get it done at least try.
I've done it in the past. I'm not doing it this year, but I'll be training this year for sure, but not doing the Murph this year.
Nice. Brandon, how many of you guys are going to, so when you're at station doing it, how many of you guys will be doing it?
It depends. The station I'm working overtime, it's kind of younger guys. It's a mix of younger and older. So I'm thinking the guys off the top of my head, I could probably get like one or two to do it with me. Realistically, I'll probably be by myself. Most of the guys don't really work out there at that station, and the guys that do just lift heavy and don't do the
So they don't want
the
to do that
cardio
mile.
stuff. No, yeah, the mile they'll say no. So I'll probably end up being by myself, which is okay. They'll be in the gym too, but it's a real small gym, which is also a problem because it's like the size of a bedroom. I don't know. It's an old station, but so.
Yeah, we were talking about at work the other day because we were like, well, what's the easiest part of the Murph? And you start like looking at all those ramps. You think about doing 100 pull-ups in kit, which is difficult. We're like, I don't know. Is it the push-ups? Is it the squats? We're like, dude, let's be truthful. The easiest part is that first mile that you can casually run. After that, you're just moving at that point. And then when you go into that second mile, your arms are pumped from pull-ups and push-ups, and you're just like T-Rex arms for that first half mile of it all. So I will definitely say that first mile is by far the easiest part of that Murph.
I usually partition it too. I do the what is it, Cindy, the 20 rounds of 5, 10, 15. But talking to dad training on Instagram, we were chatting about it. He's like, just got to do it like you should. So that's my goal, is to do 100 of them too, and then 3. But we'll see how long it takes me.
Oh, so you're gonna do it all 100, then all 200, then all 300. Is that what you're saying?
That's the art prescribed way. Everybody breaks it down. Definitely, it's going to take me longer. So we'll see.
It'll be easier to keep up with your reps there as opposed to if you got to like 16 here, 27 here, and now you're trying to remember it from all three, especially if you don't have a whiteboard to write it down with.
Yeah, for sure.
So cool. Absolutely. So let's go ahead and dive into the conversation tonight. Tonight, we are talking about loaded carries, all the ways to use them in your training sessions, and then a lot of real world application we have with it. I know Jimmy's a huge fan of loaded carries. Brandon, from what I see on Instagram, you are very much a fan of them. I do strongly believe they are one of the most underutilized movements in the gym, especially when you start thinking about like core movements. Everyone wants to do crunches, whatever cool thing they saw on Instagram, but just the benefits you get from core training with loaded carries is phenomenal, and definitely, like I said, one of the most underutilized movements. So Jimmy, I know you are passionate about loaded carries, so I'm gonna let you go ahead and kick us off on exactly what a loaded carry is and the intent we look for with it.
It's pretty straightforward. A loaded carry is carrying any heavy loaded implement, whether it's kettlebells, sandbags, farmer's handles, a human being, doesn't matter. And you're carrying that for either time or distance. So it's pretty straightforward. I usually program it in one of two ways, either a set distance or a set time. And then I either increase volume or intensity. So increase the length of time you're carrying it or further distance, or obviously picking up a heavier implement and moving it for the same distance. So still having a structure to it. And I just think whether you're a tactical professional or your average Joe, it doesn't matter. I think everybody should benefit from doing some sort of loaded carry or just odd object carry. I think there's a real world carryover for anybody. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of times when people see it on social media, they think to all these tactical jobs, and obviously with individuals we work with, yes, there's a lot of carryover with it. But I think one of the things that people don't think about when they think about a loaded carry is just think about, we're sitting here all on our cameras, computers, a lot of our shoulders might be a little slumped forward, but three of us probably make an effort to put it back. But yeah. So, but think about how much time we spend sitting like this throughout the day in a simple carry where we fix our shoulders back, how much we can correct just from these deficiencies that we have through our daily life. We're hip flexion right now. We're getting up tall. There's so many great things with carries. It doesn't just have to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be just somebody in tactical setting who has to, move a body or something like that. It can fix a lot of things for just the average individual.
And I think that's a great point. And I categorize everything when it comes to program design. So for my carries, it's either a low carry, which is a farmer's carry, or a suitcase carry or something like that. A high carry being like a shoulder carry, whether it's a sandbag or like a heavy med ball or something like that. And then an overhead carry, which would be holding a barbell overhead, walking it for distance, holding a single kettlebell or a single dumbbell, things like that. So I break it up based on category, whatever my focus is for that particular phase or that individual. So I think that's really important too, is like not just doing a loaded carry for no reason, like have a purpose, and whether it's your job or whether it's to be able to pick up your kids on your shoulder or something like that, just have a purpose for why you're doing what you're doing is important.
Right. And so I know before when we talked on grip training, you talked about the multiple types of grip training and working that in throughout the week. Do you view those three forms of carries as you're looking to get each one of those in throughout the week, or is that going to be more dependent on the individual you're working with?
Definitely depends on the individual. I think that's a great way to do it. Some people are not ready to do some sort of carry every single day, but you could absolutely categorize it like that. Like, hey, I'm going to do Mondays, I'm going to do a low carry farmer's carry. Wednesday, I'm going to do a high carry sandbag on my shoulder. And then Friday, do either a high carry like overhead or something like that, or even a Zercher carry. So you could, but I would tread carefully with that. And if you're new to it, I would just probably go with a low carry. That's usually the safer option, because everybody should be able to, everybody carries groceries, everybody carries things low, things like that. So farmer's carry is an easy entry to loaded carries into a program.
And I will say, as a coach, it drives me crazy when I see people do a low carry or farmer's carry, and they sit there, let's say we're using kettlebells, and they just have it hooked into their fingers, not truly gripping that kettlebell, thumb wrapped, and they're just kind of letting it hang, where they start to get forward into the kettlebell. Grip that kettlebell in the middle, squeeze the life out of those kettlebells so we truly get the work into it. We need, if you are doing it for time, Jimmy mentioned that early on. I remember I used to do some of DeFranco's workouts where I believe it was like a 5-minute carry, which is very taxing. If you're hanging on there at the end, yeah, I get that it slips. But if we're going 50 yards, squeeze the life out of that kettlebell, those dumbbells, truly get the intent out of it that we need.
That's a great point. And then the other side of it too is like using a hook grip, like out of necessity. So if you're just training your grip strength, I don't think you necessarily always need to do a hook grip. You can just do a standard, just overhand grip. But when it comes to training for your job or things like that, where your life depends or somebody else's life depends on you holding onto that implement, hook grip is beneficial for that. So I think having a hook grip and getting used to it and getting comfortable with it on loaded carries is important as well. But that's really more specific and getting into the weeds. But that's something to think about as well, is doing a hook grip. Carry.
What's your thought? Like, I always have people ask me, can they use straps? Because they think their grip is strong enough and they really want to work on the distance of a carry, like a farmer's. And so they'll throw wrist straps on.
Coming from like the strongman world, like back in the day when I used to compete in strongman, that was never allowed. Obviously, it was allowed for deadlifts, but not for carries. So I think most people would benefit from grip strength and not strapping up, because it's going to allow a lot of things could go wrong there, especially now you're moving with an implement that's probably too heavy for you and you're more for injury and things like that. So I prefer just using your hands and figuring it out that way.
And surprisingly, I've noticed like chalk, like sounds easy, but chalk helps a ton too.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, chalk without a doubt, especially as we're getting into the summer months and we have a lot of garage gym lifters out there. Chalk is king. One challenge out there, Peter Attia, his book is Outlive. I highly recommend it to anybody out there, but he basically talks about some metrics for longevity, and one test for men is 100% of your body weight, so 50% in each hand for, I believe it's a minute or 2 minutes. I think it's a minute. So basically, if you're a 200-pound man, you put 100-pound dumbbells or kettlebells in each hand and you walk it for a minute. And that's like a test for that. And you could always progress to that. Let's say you're not up to 100% of your body weight. You could always start at 50% and then build up. But I think that's a good test for a lot of people.
Well, Jimmy, on our tactical readiness assessment, I believe we did it as a trap bar carry, but it is loading your body weight up. I think we did it for distance, right? I think we did it at 100 yards.
Yeah.
So I wonder what that equates to, because I believe we have in the instructions you're not to run with it. It is you're walking with it. I wonder what that time equates to. I wonder how close that gets to that 60 seconds.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah. And kind of, I think we were having a similar thought there, Brandon, when you asked about the straps. Jimmy, going back to athletics, you always hear a lot of coaches that would talk about their linemen or whatever position. They would never let them use straps in the gym. Did you let your athletes use straps in the gym?
Back in the day, early on in my career, I did. On certain exercises, like I really like straps for probably the two main ones would be shrugs, barbell shrugs, or heavy dumbbell shrugs. And then sometimes even RDLs as well, because I don't want my grip to give out before my hamstrings and my glutes or my traps shrugs. So on those movements, yes. Back in the day, I even let people use it on, and I apologize now, but even on clean, on hang cleans, but that's not the focus. I don't allow that now, but yeah, so I used to, but not anymore. So, but on certain times, there's a time and place for it. I don't think you should use it on like lat pull downs and pull ups and stuff like that. But certain times, it's a tool in the toolbox. So,
yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely valuable for the athletes to work that grip strength in the gym and not become reliant on those straps. But if we look at some of these big, strong offensive linemen, their grip's going to give out before their hamstrings and glutes are on an RDL.
100%.
So let's not sacrifice, maximizing that posterior chain just because we're so fixated on keeping an overhand grip in an RDL.
100%. And Brandon, I got a question for you, switching gears from athletics into more tactical. So as a firefighter yourself, where do you see like loaded carries, and what loaded carry in particular do you try to prioritize because of what you do?
As Ben said, like they're my favorite thing. I think sandbag, bear hug carries are probably up there with farmers carries for me. Just because with a sandbag bear hug, it's like obviously physically challenging, but mentally, because as you know, if you've done them, it's hard to get that full chest expansion for your breath. But to correlate with the fire service, I was actually talking to somebody today on one of my videos. They're asking what are the lifting standards. And as I came across some research, it was like a recommendation through the NSCA is that you should be able to carry 50 pounds or higher, which should be easy, 75 to 100 feet, like as a firefighter, because that's kind of the range of the weight for tools that we carry, right? Like our saws, if you're carrying a straight ladder in like a suitcase position versus over your shoulder. And then even our EMS boxes, which I've talked before, 85 to 90% of my calls are medical. Those are probably 40 pounds. I've never weighed them, but so I think farmers carries is huge in the fire service, and the sandbag, anything front loaded is going to help challenge that posterior, right? Because you always hear that lower back injuries are huge in the fire service, and I think just challenging that, like Ben was saying, keeping our posture right and working those posterior muscles is going to be beneficial to our job.
No, that makes sense. That's interesting that it's only, would you say weight-wise was the standard?
It said it was 50 pounds per hand or more. You have to be able to carry it 75 to 100 feet. And I know you have to take a CPAT, which is a candidate physical agility or ability test. It's been 15 years since I've done it. But you have to have that to test for fire. And there's a tool carry that's part of it. And I don't remember the weight. I think it's only like 35 is in my head, like 30 or to 40 per hand. It's just two saws. You have to take above you. They're like on a shelf about eye level. You have to take them down, pick them up, walk a distance, put them back up. So it's pretty easy. But I think that just is the average weight of most of our tools. Now, and then carrying victims, that's a whole nother thing, right? You're not going to be farmers carrying somebody out of a house, but I think just in general, like you said, your grip strength is a priority because we put our fire gloves on and they're so thick to protect us from the heat, but you lose your dexterity. And that's the number one thing new recruits will say is like, I can't do anything. Like I can't hold anything. Like, how do I get used to it? And you're like, just wear them. Like, just get used to wearing gloves. And that's why I'm big on grip strength. Like I'll use straps on deadlift because I don't compete anymore. And I know my grip's fine, but anybody starting out, I'm like you, I always recommend don't use straps on anything really if you can.
Yeah. And that was going to be my next question for you because like you talking about like your tools that you're carrying, but I'm not a firefighter, but I hope somebody shows up. God forbid I ever have a fire in my house. I hope there's a Brandon coming through the door helping because obviously you can carry victims out. So as far as victim carries, what would be the approach to carrying another human being for you? Like, is there a particular technique that they put?
Well, yeah, now especially nowadays, we actually just had some training on it that you don't want anybody's head if a room or atmosphere is full of smoke. I think it's 30 or 36 inches or lower, right? So it might even be lower than that, and I'm probably going to get someone's going to comment that I don't know what I'm talking about. But their head can't be higher than a certain length, a certain height off the ground. Otherwise, they start inhaling that smoke. So it's no longer pick them up in your arms like this or put them over your shoulders. There's actually ways they'll teach you to if you could picture someone's laying flat, you kind of cross their legs and I'll kneel down and I'll put my arms around their legs so their feet are behind me and I'll just lean and I can tripod position and drag them out, right? Like our mindset is if they're in a fire, they're probably not going to be conscious. We're going to get them out as fast as we can or into another room that's going to be, a clear atmosphere. Now, children, you can pick kids up pretty easily, but I've never had a grab or had a rescue, but just the things you train on is their heads have to stay low because the percentage of survival decreases if their head comes up.
That's interesting. Bubbles. So it's almost like a combination of a carry and a drag at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's why it's crucial to build your back, right? Have that strong back because you got to picture if you're tripoding, you're we're put in these weird precarious positions, and I think that's why there's such high injury rates on backs and knees and shoulders because guys don't work out or they don't do programming that we all believe in, and it just ends up making them not, be strong enough, and then they start hurting themselves because in proper form.
That's a great point too, Brandon, because it's one thing to have a proper back angle on a deadlift, but in real life, when shit hits the fan, you're not thinking about like perfect back angles. Like if somebody's laying on the ground, you're going to get them up by any means necessary. So I think there's definitely something to be said about just training odd implements and different angles to basically just on the injury prevention side of things as well. So right. I don't know if you want to talk about.
Yeah, and I think that's why, strongman is that world. If you were to do only like a strength sport, strongman's better than powerlifting because all the odd objects, like that all correlates to our job. And then you add our turnouts, they make you have less mobility in them, right? Because everything's just fitting it's properly fits you, but just tighter, thicker. And then you have your SCBA, your air pack on. So that's, 30, 40 pounds on your back. That's why I think rucking, anything odd object, anything just carrying any load is going to be beneficial to us because it's like you said, when you're shit and getting, for lack of better terms, you're not going to be like, okay, I got to sit down. You're going to grab and go. So you're going to be twisting and bending in weird positions that aren't natural for us. And so following a program or doing these sandbag carries, Zercher carries, all this stuff is going to, I think, a huge carryover to the fire service for injury prevention, at least.
That's a great point. And again, it just goes back to like training in multiple planes as well. Those of you guys listening, so there's 3 different planes. There's a sagittal plane, which most exercises are performed in, squat, bench, deadlift, sagittal plane. But then there's the frontal plane, which if you cut your body in half, it's the frontal plane. So lateral movement, things like that. And then the transverse plane would be something like swinging a sledgehammer, just a rotational based movement. So that's why we try to prioritize, regardless of the training team, like training multi-planar movements. And carries definitely could fall into that, or even like this is like a hybrid of like a carry / loading movement where you pick up an object and then 90-degree turn and load it onto a platform or something like that. So it's really important, just not only for performance but injury prevention as well. Because how many times do you hear about just a person throws out their back, just like rotating and picking up their kid, or rotating and tying their shoe or something like that. So getting out of that typical sagittal plane world is really important for a lot of people, or all people.
And I could tell you the last 3 back injuries of our members I can think of was, well, one was a long time ago. I was carrying a bariatric or overweight person off of a mountain rescue. One was a lift assist, so somebody fell, and I don't even think they were extremely heavy, but just twisting and bending. And the third one was they were just getting out of bed, or it's either getting out of bed or putting their pants on, something funny like that. So it's like stuff you wouldn't even think of. Like they weren't jumping through a window to save somebody or jumping off a truck. It was just like, let's pick this person up, or I'm twisting, and then they're done, and then they're on light duty for 8 weeks, and then you got to rehab, and it's this vicious circle.
100%. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'm a big advocate of that. So, yeah, but as far as like program design wise, for at least from my standpoint, but I like to hear both of your guys' standpoint. I'll typically start with a particular distance. So, like, let's say it's 50 or whatever, 40 yards. And then I'll stay with that distance typically, but then I'll increase intensity. But if I want to build more volume, I'll just increase the distance they actually have to carry it. So, I'd like to hear both of your thoughts as far as progressions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on the same page with you, Jimmy. I'm going to start out at distances. We're going to start out with certain intensity. We are going to build up in that intensity once I get to whatever. Like if you have 80-pound kettlebells that you're doing your carries with, and you have 50 yards to work with, once that 50 yards becomes too easy and we don't feel our grip being challenged, then it's going to be extended out over that distance. But yeah, typically I'll have that set distance and then work that intensity up to progress with it.
Yeah. Brandon,
yeah, same. I mean, I think we're all on the same page with that. You can sometimes I'll go back and forth to, like, if we're doing say 40 yards, I'll increase the weight, because that to me is another way you can increase your intensity, right? Is increasing the amount of weight you have to carry. But if you're not successful at the first 40 yards, there's no reason to go up in weight. And then once it gets too easy, we either go, so many factors you can change, increase the weight or the distance too. But I think everything that you guys have said is same page. I'm still learning all this. I'm following kind of your guys' footsteps and some life experiences, but so I think we're all, like I said, the same page for that.
Yeah. And then another phenomenal way to manipulate it is we start doing it at different times. Maybe you don't always do a carry when you feel good doing it. So maybe we are doing it in a fatigued state. So if you max out at 80 pounds, kettlebells is what you have access to. If you're supersetting that with a 500-meter row, that 80 pounds feels a lot heavier for the 50 yards than if you were just, I'm going to do 4x50 right here. And then again, we're getting into these hotter months. Grip starts to struggle as we start to sweat more. I was doing a workout a couple weeks ago where it was a sled drag with a carry. And honestly, I was sweating so much that with the chalk, I started to make a paste on the the sled handles. And it kind of, if either of you guys grew up watching Friends, all I could think the whole time during the circuit was when Ross tries those New Year's leather pants. You guys watch Friends?
Yeah.
I've seen that. He's trying to like get the leather pants back on, and he creates a paste. That's all I could think as I was doing this carry, because that's what I had created on the handles.
That's a good point as far as like when to do your carries. Like I've done it training for strongman where I'll have an event specific day. So let's say I'm on a 3-day strength plan, and then my 4th day is an events day, and I'll have a carry as part of my events. But let's say you're not training for strongman and you just want to implement it in your programming. I've been using it, especially for Team Lunch Pail, like so the tier system, as everybody's well aware, if you follow us, that's what we typically follow. So the total body tier 1 being the deadlift, that's my main movement, or a clean or something like that. But my tier 2 and tier 3 total body movement I'll do some sort of weighted carry in there. So because it's total body, there's a lot of different ways you can go with it from an exercise standpoint, but I've liked having it within the training week. So on a 3-day split, let's say it's so day one, lower upper total. So my lower movement is a big squat movement. So it's a front squat. And then it's maybe some sort of press movement. And then tier 3. So now you're almost a half hour, 45 minutes into your lift. You're already in a fatigue state and you're forcing someone to still have to carry something, grip it and carry for time or distance. So I've really liked implementing carries for my total body tier from a programming standpoint. So that's how I've been implementing as well for somebody who's not competing in strongman. If you're competing in strongman, typically you have like an event specific day where you're doing some sort of carry, some sort of clean and press with an axle or log, whatever. That's a whole separate conversation, but that's how I've implemented in programming as of late. So
One thing I was thinking back of, like, to increase intensity for like firefighters specifically, is just putting your fire gloves on. You know what I mean? Like, the weight, you'll be amazed at how much less weight you can do because losing that dexterity and the grip. Like, I just brought in, I have those jerry cans from GoRuck. I think they're 55 pounds. And guys are like, we call it a skills course where you're in full gear on air, getting acclimated. And guys are like, dude, we usually do like 80-pound dumbbells, And I'm like, well, throw your gloves on this time and carry the bag. And sure enough, it's like, dude, it just smokes your forearms. It's only 55 pounds. So that's another way I'll tell like firefighters, if they want to increase the intensity on their farmers carries, just put your fire gloves on.
that's a good point.
That would be, I wonder if there's a study out there on that. That'd be interesting to see what percentage of strength is lost with new firefighters because of dexterity lost with those gloves. I wonder if they know.
Probably mispronounce it, but a hand grip dynamometer? Is that the right terminology?
Dynamometer. Yes, close.
Dynamometer. Yeah. But get one of those and then try to. I've never thought about that, but we had one at one of my stations. But I should have tried it, no gloves versus gloves, and see if there really is a big difference in your. There's got to be, you know what I mean? Because that's the first thing, guys. You'll see them in the academy with a nozzle spraying water, and they'll have to let go, and they'll like zombie it, and the nozzle's stuck in their armpit, and they're like, I can't use my hands. Like, it's pretty funny. I was there, I did it. I was that guy, but you get used to it, just get acclimated to the job.
And that's an important thing for strength coaches to realize as well. Because like as a strength coach, whether it's a sport or a profession like a firefighter, doing a needs analysis on the person that you're working with and understanding all the demands. So if you're working with football, obviously you have to understand the demands of football. But if you're working with a firefighter, something like wearing gloves is an important thing to take in consideration and understand. So no, that's a great point, Brandon. So, and like back to that as well, like how much weight with all your equipment on, how much is that roughly?
Oh, I think like 75 or 80 pounds total. I've never weighed myself, but and it depends on the brand of SCBA and turnouts. Like, your turnouts these days are designed even better so you can go farther into fire and be within hotter environments, but then at the same time they're thicker material. Like our Lion brand, I think it's like Red Line's the model. They're extremely hot just in general, just putting them on, and they're very heavy compared to the first stuff I got hired with just 10 years ago. And so, I would probably assume with your air pack, all your gear, you're probably around 75 or 80 pounds heavier. So that's why, like, to go off path, but being 295 back in 2017 when I was powerlifting, I'm over 350 pounds with everything on. And man, I could push a collar, but I couldn't do anything in gear. So, that's why it's important to find that balance of everything, just because everything is so heavy these days.
That's a good point. And how long do you have that on? Like on average, let's say.
So if you're working on a fire, the bottles are called 45-minute bottles, but nobody ever goes 45 minutes. I'd say your average time is anywhere from 15 to 20 of like solid work. Like typically we pull up to a house, and if you're on an engine or a pumper, depending on what state you're from, the guys are gonna pull line off the truck, go to the front door, force the door if they have to, wait for their captain. So for me, since I'm a captain, I don't have to pull the hoses as much. I'm just getting off. I'm doing command stuff. I'm running this. I'm setting the scene up, the big picture. But But those firefighters are, they're under the door, going through the house. The line's charged. I don't know the weight of a charged line, 50 pounds, 80 pounds. Pulling that in the house. The next guy's pulling ceiling if it's above you. So you're probably about 15, 20 minutes of, I would say, like solid work. Now there's guys that probably go longer because they're machines, and there's guys that ring faster like I was, and I was on a ladder truck when I was that size, or some states call them a truck company. So we would go to the roof and we would cut a hole with a chainsaw to let the heat and smoke out so it's more tenable inside for victims and our guys. And so ladder guys or truckies are always known to be the bigger guys because they're carrying the chainsaws, they're doing the extrication, jaws of life on a car. That's what they do, forcible entry. And so they're the bigger guys of the department. But I'd be like 10 minutes and I'm ringing. The terminology is when you're ringing, your bottle's low. Like our packs have it's like a bicycle bell that's super loud. Some packs are like a vibra alert, so they just vibrate. You could tell. So you never want to be that guy that rings first. Like that's what you hear in the fire service. Like don't be the guy that rings first, because then your whole crew has to exit the structure, right? It's an accountability thing. So if I'm in there and my guy starts ringing, no matter how deep we are into the firefight or whatever, we got to get out, and then someone's got to replace us. So nobody wants that.
And that's another good point too, because loaded carries are also carrying your equipment, because that's not nothing.
Yep.
70, 80 pounds, or adding a hose,
Yep.
all that other equipment, whatever, you could be looking at close to 100 pounds. So I think that's also the justification for you guys, even though you don't have like timed ruck marches and things like that, but the justification for doing a ruck, because if you can go on an hour plus ruck and cover whatever your time standard per mile, 15 minutes or less, like you'll probably be okay wearing your gear in a house or just being under load for that amount of time. Whereas if you don't train like that, and then you have to then wear your equipment, then you're wearing oxygen and all that stuff, like you're going to be pinging, I imagine, before everybody else. So
yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing I've noticed since like religiously doing ruck with Warfighter, because there'd be days where I'd be programmed to ruck, but I'd ride my bike or do something else. But having a 50-pound rucksack for the 80 minutes like today we did, when I put my SCBA on it, it's like super light. Like it's that carryover to everything you're doing makes your job easier. And so like if you're not training appropriately and you go pick up a tool, and now to me, this is what makes sense in my head, is I'm using more energy because I'm in less shape to carry that object versus somebody that does it religiously is training. It's easier for them. And then there's that cardiovascular, aerobic and anaerobic capacity stuff that kicks in. But that's why I'm a huge proponent, and I probably drive people crazy in my department, training like I do. But I wish that everybody would follow the footsteps, and just doesn't have to be with us, but just in general, like lift, run, carry, like easy.
that's it. Sometimes as simple as that. And as far as like energy system wise, like heart rate, have you ever tracked your heart rate like during a fire, things like that?
I can't remember during a fire, but I tried one of those Whoop bands for a little bit during like our workout and our turnouts, and you're like high 180s. I think like 185, 188. Like I don't even know if I hit 190, but and that was in the conditioning I'm in now, and I don't feel like overwhelmingly fatigued. It's just, I imagine when you put your gear on, just standing there, you're already probably super fast, just because the turnouts do a great job of keeping heat out, but it traps everything in. So then our core temperature increases and our heart rate, everything. There's the whole science of it. But I think like high 180s was probably the highest I've gotten in gear. I could probably look, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's a testament to your training too, because if you're not touching those type of heart rates in training, and then you're forced to do it for your job, you're going to burn out a lot quicker because you're just not used to training like that. So that's a testament and a priority of training is training like that, like getting that heart rate up, under load, and things like that. So no, that's all great information.
Yeah, and that's kind of like in Iron Inferno, the program I wrote, is like the circuit work is written to be done in your turnouts. And there's obviously scalable options if you don't have access to gear. Depends what department you're in. The biggest fight right now is our turnouts have PFAS in it, which is a carcinogen. So now it's like the gear that we wear is giving guys cancer, right? It's a minute amount. It's on the external shell of the turnouts. So a lot of departments you're going to don't get in your gear unless you absolutely have to, which makes it a challenge because if you don't train in your gear, like I don't care how good of a person you are in the gym, the minute you put that on, your conditioning is way different, right? But luckily, there's companies that are starting. I just bought a set from Karna Gear. It's not a shill or anything, but it's 100% cotton turnouts that I can train in it now and not have to worry about that exposure. And that's things that departments can look at too, right? Like I know it sounds bad. A lot of guys use that as an excuse of why they don't get in gear, and I don't. It's okay. Like if that's your belief, is you don't want to get exposed to it. But I'm a believer that you have to get in that stuff, or otherwise it's gonna be detrimental to your job.
That's super interesting, though, that companies are coming out with, because they've acknowledged the fact of the cancer risk and things like that, but to give them you guys a training tool that you can use and just be under that load and similar restrictions and things like that. That's that's really interesting. Cool. Ben, what do you got, Ben?
Yeah, so that is interesting with the talking about the gear. And it makes me think of what we talked about a little bit last week, Jimmy, with Andy, when we talked about training specifically. Because if we don't get out there and train with what you're going to have on, when it comes time to do it, like how can you go out and execute it to your best ability, right? So I mean, I totally get it from what you're saying there, and like, yeah, people don't want to increase their risk of cancer, obviously. But yeah, finding those ways to actually still train and get that stimulus that you would have from the gear is definitely going to be extremely valuable with it all.
Yeah, and the tough part for tactical professionals, and we've talked about this ad nauseum before, but like in athletics, it's, I don't want to say easy, but it is, because when the season is, when your games start, when practices start, when the championship is. For you guys, Brandon, you could get a call, I assume, right now. So there's no, like Brian has talked about this before, there's no peaking. Like you should always be ready to do anything at any given point in time. So that's because like in college athletics, in early off season, I'd be less concerned with my, let's say, lacrosse players getting in cleats and doing speed and agility or whatever early off season or even over the summer, because we're so far away from season. But for you guys, you need to be training in what you're going to be fighting fires in, because that happens every day and you never know what the next call is going to be and things like that. So it's a testament to you guys, and it's a testament to your training of like making it a priority, because it's not only your own life, but it's somebody else's life. So if you're not taking care of yourself, one, you're putting yourself at risk, but then maybe you can't get to that victim on the second or third floor. So I give you guys a lot of credit. Like I always had respect for police, fire, military, EMS, because it's incredible what you guys do. So
Yeah, and there's so many, not just companies that make PFAS free gear, but there's specific soaps that are coming out and like decon policies to where like as soon as you're done, go shower. There's been studies of, is it beneficial to get in a sauna after a fire because that's going to open up your pores and let the smoke and carcinogen out, or cold therapy, like all this stuff is just being hit these days, and on all sides of it just to protect us, because I think studies were like 2 times higher to get cancer than the average person. And so it is challenging because like Ben was saying, if you don't ever get in gear, then the minute you need to, you're going to struggle. And that's another difficult thing of this modern era is 90% of our calls are medical, right? So the chances we're in full gear are slim these days, at least in my department. These still departments in different states that are burning multiple times a day. There's cities here in Arizona that same thing, but it's like that, small 10% window of your month that you could potentially get something, is you need to be ready for it type thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Could you imagine football going out and not practicing in their pads and being expected to go out and execute at a game?
Yeah. One, from like an injury standpoint as well, like
Yeah.
no pads and all of a sudden you're going full contact pads, like on a call, like, hey, it's 9:00 at night and hey guys, you got practice in the morning. We're going full contact in the morning, full pad. Who's going to get think about firefighter police, military, like you got to be training and be ready all the time. So, and again, that's why I like concurrent training where you're constantly working on multiple qualities. Yeah, you could have a certain quality we're trying to drive more than others. Hey, maybe we're trying to drive true, like absolute strength, but we're still going to be working on power. We're still going to be working on conditioning at all periods of the annual plan or the year. But that's really essential for any first responder, military, things like that, because you have to be ready at all times of the year. You can't just be working really one quality. You should be working on all qualities and not letting one fall so far behind. So I think that's really
Are you
important.
kind of doing like as a newer coach, like, and we're always doing a needs analysis for every new athlete. So that's kind of what your needs analysis would be, right? Like, hey, I got this firefighter that strong as an ox, but needs to work on its conditioning, or I got this guy that is conditioned but needs to be strength. Like that's pretty kind of where our needs analysis comes in, right?
100%. And the needs analysis is 100% looking at the job, like what is going to keep you safe and the person you're protecting safe. So, what is the equipment you're going to be in? What is the environment you're going to be in? What are the most commonly injured areas of the body? All those things. Obviously, if somebody falls from a roof or falls from a ladder, there's nothing you can really do to prevent that. But things that are preventable are like non-contact injuries. So lower back injuries from just picking up an odd object or swinging whatever your breaching tool or whatever, like those things you shouldn't blow your back out from doing that. Obviously injuries are going to happen, but if you can do everything in your ability to prevent some of those injuries, those non-contact injuries, that's part of the needs analysis as well. I imagine for firefighters it's probably lower back, knees, ankles, and I imagine even just cardiorespiratory, like heart attack, things like that.
Yep.
They're overexerting, so you need to work everything. You need to work ankle stability. You got to work lower back bracing, and that goes back to loaded carries. Like loaded carries, you want to work your core. Like you carry an object either in one hand or on one shoulder, you're bracing that opposite side. So if I'm carrying, that's the other thing, like with loaded carries, I know we talked about it for performance, but it's also an injury prevention tool as well. Like I'll do loaded carries and as an anti-lateral flexion exercise. So for those of you guys who are not familiar, lateral flexion is like your body going sideways. So anti-lateral flexion would be preventing your body from going this way. So if I'm holding a dumbbell or a kettlebell in one side, I am working my opposite side to keep my torso in line. So you want to like talk about like doing functional core strengthening, carry a single object and walk for distance, and your core is turned on. I promise you that. So I much prefer core bracing exercises versus crunches to nauseum and hanging leg tucks. Like they all have their place, but like I'm more about functional core, and there's nothing more functional than carrying an odd object because everything has to be turned on, or you're going to get hurt, or you're going to fall over. So I think that's another part of loaded carries that's important to think about as well.
And there's another thing I love with loaded carries because oftentimes we think about just staying linearly with those carries, right? So one of the ones I used to do all the time is I would set up cones diagonally into where I would have to change direction at each cone. So now I'm really starting, you talked about the ankles. So now I'm really starting to work those ankles in that carry as opposed to just walking in that straight line. I absolutely loved that version of a carry. You know, we talked earlier about how to progress it. That's another way to progress it.
Absolutely. 100% agree there. Yeah. Just changing your angles. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and it could be something simple, like talk about working those ankles, those feet. Hell, you could be doing it in a big ass circle and then changing direction that you go into that circle. And so we're really starting to work those ankles at that point. Make sure you do change direction. Don't go in the same direction every single time because that will cause injuries itself.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's kind of like, doing farmers carries, like in strongman competitions where you have to turn around at the cone like that. First time I did that, I'm like, holy crap, like you have to brace everything to be safe and make your proper turn and not get injured.
Absolutely.
Turning around, I used to do, when I had access to a high handle trap bar, I used to do a trap bar overhead with the high handle to get the stability aspect. But then turning around at that point with it was brutal. You feel your core and then all the stabilized muscles in the shoulders really working on that one.
No, absolutely. Like, yeah, I think again, just thinking about what your job entails and trying to make your training as specific as possible. Like, again, if you have to carry something on your back for time or distance, you should probably have that in the program so you're not just going out and doing it when time comes. So I think yoke carries are phenomenal, phenomenal carry. Zercher carries are another great option, but just think about it. Like, what does your job entail? Is it carrying a litter like with a human being on it? Well, you should probably be training more neutral grip. So like, again, like a farmer's carry or a trap bar carry, something like that. Are you carrying something on your shoulders? Well, maybe you should be doing a yoke carry or a D-ball or whatever, something like that. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's funny you mentioned the litter because like my crew, we're technical rescues, so we're doing mountain rescues. Like we'll hike up Camelback Mountain's a big one here in Arizona. Put people potentially, we usually hoist or fly them out nowadays for our safety, but we call it a big wheel operation. So it is just a giant metal basket with a giant, like an off-road, like ATV looking tire in the middle. And doing that in school, like if you don't have the right height people across from you, it's just all unilateral, neutral grip. And you're like bent over for like 20 minutes walking down this uneven terrain. And I remember guys are just like, oh man, my freaking back. And, those tricks to put webbing over it to help so you can stand up. But that was like the biggest eye opener too for like making sure you're doing unilateral work because I feel like everything we do you're never going to be, it's all unilateral, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing is going to be a perfectly even barbell or dumbbell. So you should have that in your program at all times. Yeah, and then Brandon, like if I know at least for me, if I have to carry something, I'm not carrying human beings, but if I know I have to carry something heavy for a distance, like in a workout, I may throw a hook grip. Did you ever mess around with a hook grip like for your job, or did that something you'd never even thought of? Or
I don't think we ever. I probably have just playing around, like standing around on scene or something, but not. I haven't like purposefully have done it to see if it helps. I imagine it will.
yeah,
Um, Hook grip, I still haven't ever really figured out on a deadlift. Just getting through that first couple weeks of pain in the thumb, but I think it was programmed on Warfighter hook grip only deadlifts. Probably back in like November, December. And I did feel like doing it religiously, my weight was drastically less, but it did start feeling more comfortable. And I should have stuck with it, but I didn't.
yeah. Because I think more people like yourself, like a firefighter, police, military, whatever, I think really prioritizing that neutral grip is important, especially for you, like a litter carry or something like that. You're not going to carry it like a barbell. You're going to carry it at your sides, most likely, either in one hand or in two hands. So I think that's an important quality to focus on as well. So
Yeah, now you say that, thinking of all the tools, like everything is pretty much a neutral grip. Besides, like our chainsaws, the handles are more of a pronated, but I never really thought of it to be honest. But yeah, pretty much everything's neutral besides the chainsaws and circular saws that we use.
yeah, no, and like going. I know we're talking about loaded carries, but again, grip training I know is a big topic. A lot of people, whether it's for your job or as people like jujitsu or wrestling or whatever, the three different types of grip again are crushing grip, like a hand gripper and crushing the hand gripper. Supporting grip would be that like farm carry type grip, and then pinch grip. So working all those, I think, is important when doing any type of carry because the nice part about like carries, you can kill two birds with one stone. You could do a carry with a plate in one hand, so you're getting some core stability, you're getting some grip strength, and you're getting a loaded carry all in one. So, because everybody's short on time. You think about training like a pie. You're trying to get your strength work. You need to warm up. Want to work power, conditioning, all of these things, and then you add your family, work, whatever. There's only so much time. So sometimes just prioritizing like what's the best bang for my buck and getting a lot of things accomplished with one movement. So I think some of you guys can think about that as well. How can I get my grip training to check a couple boxes in one as well is important. So just something to think about.
Yeah.
What do you got, Ben?
No, yeah, so I think it's good stuff. So we are getting to a closeout here at this point. Before we sign off tonight, if I get from you guys, and of course I'm going to say my own, you guys can say what your favorite variation of a carry is. If just listening tonight, I'm sure you've heard us rattle off countless ones of them, and there really is a lot. So it's not just the farmer's carry. So before we sign off tonight, Brandon, what is your favorite variation of a carry?
I know I said the sandbag bear hug, but thinking of it, the Zercher, man. I don't know why. Like Zercher marches if you don't have the room to carry. But just something about that, just it's a posterior, you're fighting it, it's a mental toughness. I think those are probably my new favorite carries.
Yeah, I do love Zerchers. And Andy brought up a great point, I think on one of the first YouTube lives he was on, is being careful with that Zercher, though. Because if you're somebody who's not used to holding it in there, and now you're using your biceps a lot to hold that up as well,
Yep.
we are putting ourselves at risk for injury. So if you are going to go out and try a Zercher carry, be cautious of the load that you are putting on that bar to start with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So,
No, it's a good
Jimmy,
one.
what you got for us?
I keep it simple. I like them all, but I would say probably just the traditional farmer's carry. I like it with farmer's handles because you have to stabilize it more. So if I were to, it would be like a farmer's carry with farmer handles. So you have to manipulate that and balance the load a little bit. So, but they're all great, to be honest with you. So,
Yeah, those farmer's handles do a lot more to it.
yeah.
I will say I learned one a few years ago from one of the coaches I was working with that when he showed me at first, I was going to whatever. Then I tried it and I absolutely love it. Is a single side trap bar carry. And so everyone's done a single arm farmer's carry, but that trap bar does not let you cheat it at all because those handles are out. You'll see people do the single arm farmer's carry and they'll rest it on their quad and be over here. But that trap bar being out there, you can't rest it on your quads. And if you truly do it correctly, keeping those shoulders level, stabilizing like Jimmy talked about earlier, it will light up those obliques. And even doing it with a lighter weight of just a 45 on one side, it will truly light up that core. It's one that I'll throw in every now and then. And every time I do, I'm like, I really wish I was doing this one more. But it is extremely challenging. I think it's a phenomenal one.
So just imagining that for my fireman brain, that's just a trap bar with a plate on one side versus both.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'm going to have to try that this week.
No, it is. Yeah, it'll light you up. I find it so much more difficult than just doing a single arm farmer's carry with a kettlebell or a dumbbell because it truly gets you out there. You really have to use those obliques.
Actually, I'll add one more to it. My favorite type of carry, I'm going to give my kids a shout out, is carrying my children up a flight of stairs. So it would be a high carry, my soon-to-be 9-year-old on one shoulder and soon-to-be, actually he's already 7-year-old on the one shoulder. I'm getting some core stability. And it's almost like Milo in the calf, if you don't know that story. Quick story, Milo carried a calf. As it got bigger, he just kept getting stronger. So that's my view on carrying my kids.
Yeah.
Carry them down the stairs until I can, but hopefully that's never. So,
I thought it was interesting when we had that workshop with Dan John last year. He was talking about carries, and he was talking about a front rack carry, and he was saying that females have a lot more success in that front rack carry than males. And he didn't have the exact reason for it. He was like, maybe they're used to holding a baby right here, so they're in that position more often. He's like, I don't know. That's just kind of my hypothesis through the years. But what was very interesting is I took that on a Friday. That night, I was over at my brother's house, and I was holding my niece in this position. And like a minute or two in there, I was like, dude, I see what he was talking about.
Yeah.
As I could just feel my upper back lit up at that point. Because I'm like, I don't carry my nieces that often, but like that one night just holding her up there, I was like, I definitely feel this front rack carry now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, power to all the moms out there for that, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So, cool. That's the time we have for tonight. We appreciate you guys stopping by to see what we had to talk about. We will be back here at the same time next week. See you guys then.
Appreciate it, fellas.
See you guys.